Hatyo Tuthualos. I am called Haryas, better known as Dan, and this is Bergavulf, better known as Josh. We are members of Project Germani, a reenactment group specializing in Germanic warriors of the 1st century BC to the 1st century AD. Today we are going to demonstrate to you the various forms of combat that were used in this time. First of all, we have to remove our cloaks for battle. Cloaks were not worn in battle, mainly for the reason that they severely hinder your movement and can get in the way. Main weapons this time were the spear. Spear is a shaft, approximately 6 up to about 8 feet long, and would have an iron head on the end. For the purpose of reenactment combat, we use padded tips for safety reasons. The shield is the other main weapon. The shield is generally elongated at this time, and as we'll see later in the video, this is very useful for hooking shields as well as parrying blows and even attacking with the shield with a ram. It is excellent for personal defense. However, as you can see in the case of making a shield wall, it is not quite so good as there are obvious large gaps in the wall. As you can see, Germanic combat is very quick and offensive. If you are on the defensive in Germanic combat, you will inevitably be killed, as your shield is your only form of protection. Though it is large, by ancient standards it was small, as the Roman scutum was far larger and more suited for a defensive fighting style, whereas this requires a good offense to have a good defense. The main form of holding the spear involves bracing it against the forearm. This provides considerable control. If I hold it like this, as you often see portrayed, hit, hard. Not so much. Like this, far more control. Control is what you need with a spear. If you have little control over your spearhead, your enemy can move your spear. This simple move and technique involved the process of immobilizing his spear. I sweep from underneath, I thrust over, and now is the process of the shield hook. This is one of the reasons why the shields are elongated. You reach in, hook, and open. He is now defenseless. I can now angle my spear and stab him in the chest, in the neck, or in the face. These types of combat work excellent against other Germanics. However, when fighting Romans, problems occurred. The Germanics had already developed their fighting style for hundreds of years before contact with the Roman Empire. However, once they gained full contact with the Roman Empire, militarily that is, they had to change their form of fighting. Their fighting became far more organized, rather than just one-on-one combat. The traditional Germanic battle involved a whole row of warriors charging on one another, and then engaging in one-on-one fights until one of them was killed, and then that one would turn on the other one. So in a matter of time, it would be over very quickly as more and more of the other side got killed. However, with the Romans, they were highly organized and disciplined and had large shields, armor, and very good defense. This is why this type of formation developed. The man in the front row would have a sword. The one behind him would have a spear. Often he would hold his spear with 2 hands, with his shield with either no shield or on his back. This way, you have close quarters, and you have backup with the spear. This was one of the innovations for fighting Romans. So you can see the spear combat form is very basic. It involves quick thrusts, as well as sweeping under, over, hook, and stab. These are about the basics of spear fighting. Sword fighting, on the other hand, is far more complex, as the sword is a very close range weapon compared to the spear, which is more long range. With this, simply striking a blow can easily be blocked by a shield. A tactic is, of course, destroying the enemy's shield. However, as you see, with armor, with metal edging on the top, and with rawhide on the sides, it can be very difficult to destroy a shield. especially if you do not have a sword with a lot of weight to it. This is where the shield hook comes in again. You strike. You block. You can either come in, however, that will most likely be blocked by his shield. Another option is hooking. Once like this, he's open, and one can strike. We will now demonstrate the correct use of a shield. The shield is not held straight out like this as often portrayed. It is in fact held on a 45-degree angle by a 45-degree angle, and low like this. So incoming attacks will be deflected. Strike. As you can see, it is deflected off to the side. Stopping all attacks with your shield will inevitably result in its destruction. The shield is designed to deflect, not stop attacks. For example, the Roman pilum was a weapon that was designed to destroy shields by having the shield try to stop it, and it will pierce it. For example, this is what you do when an incoming projectile comes. You deflect it with your shield. Now, however, do that again. If I were holding, this is what would happen if I was holding the shield straight out in the front. As you can see, the shield is knocked back and it hits me in the head. Another weapon commonly used by the Germanics was the knife. This could be in the form of a specialized war knife, or it could be in the form of a simple camp knife. Both are effective combat weapons. The main key to using a knife is the shield hook. It is cheaper to produce than a sword. However, it has an obvious lack of reach. Therefore, the shield hook is important. Strike. Hook. Open. Step in. And when you step in, you always want to make sure that your shield is covering your body. Because most likely, in this case, you're just going to try to stab. And it would stop. Here with my war knife, I can slash, I can stab. In a very, very close quarters, such as this, the war knife is at a considerable advantage over the sword. However, the sword is by far the most versatile melee weapon. And a war knife, though similar to sword in function, lacks the reach. Because from this distance here, I can't even hit his shield, whereas he can easily hit mine, or even kill me with his sword. Defensive fighting loses. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm alright.
Okay. As you can see, even reenactment combat can be a bit painful. In combat, even a little slash can result in the end of the fight. The point of fighting an enemy in a battle is to immobilize him. You don't necessarily need to sever his head in a stream of gory blood and awesomeness. However, a wounded enemy is far more destructive to his own force than a dead one is. A dead one is simply buried and left behind. A wounded one must be carried and cared for by the army, which slows it down, especially in a guerrilla-style combat situation in which the Germanics faced the Romans. As we mentioned earlier, often shields are destroyed in battles. Now there's always the option of picking up a fallen shield, however, that may not always be the case. Therefore, skill with a two-handed spear is required. The two-handed spear has advantage by having reach, however, you have no defense. The main defense with a two-handed spear is a good offense. This involves a quick block, turn, and a stab. Often the case is who has the longest spear. Bergerwolf's spear is longer than mine. Therefore, in an all-out fight, he wins. Often, when fighting against a spear, it is important to get the head past you. Once the head is past you, it is harmless. Stab. Block up. Come down, and stab. See how the head has passed me? He could theoretically cut my leg a little bit, but I have already flayed his back open there and punctured his spinal cord and all the rest of it. So. As you see, two-handed spear fighting is the fastest form of fighting, and it requires a lot of skill as well as reach. The spear head is sharp on two edges and can cut, as well as any knife. Another thing you can do with a spear is use it like this to clear the area, using it like a 2-meter long sword in a sense. However, the thing is, once you swing, you're open and he can come in and hit you. A neck shot would be instantly fatal. Whoever draws the sword first is most likely going to win. Because the other one, if he has a sword or a similar combat knife, will try to pull his. In that moment, he is defenseless. You can strike. Okay, it's good. Start again. Now that you've seen lots of practice weapons, let's talk about the actual real weapons they would have used back then. This is what is called a spatha. This is a Roman-influenced weapon. The earlier ones in the Germanic times were of Celtic influence. And this is designed for a cavalry use. In a sense, you'd be riding on a horse and you'd cut down with it. However, it can equally be used effectively on foot. Because of its reach, you can stab, and of course you can cut with it very effectively. The sword Bergewulf is using is what is called a single-edged sword. This is typical of the late pre-Roman Iron Age and the early Roman Iron Age. This sword is, hence its name, single-edged. It's got a thick back on it and a straight blade. The handle is also slightly curved to enable a longer cut. Some handles are more curved than others, as you can see. This sword, in particular, is very, very light. It's designed for quick cuts. However, with its very, very thin tip, it is easier to penetrate things like chainmail, though it may not specifically have been designed for that use. The knives can also be used in combat as well. These are very, very close quarter weapons and would, in the case of well-armed warriors like ourselves, only be used in a case of an utmost emergency. If you have no weapon and still your shield, you can still fight. Strike. Grab. Over. Come in and hook. And ram with the shield like this. This will, especially hitting him in the solar plexus here, will result in the wing being knocked out of him. He will fall over. And with my hand still on the spear, I can take his spear and finish him off in that moment. That is the most common form of defense. Now let's do it fast. It's all about immobilizing the enemy's weapon and then using your shield to strike. A shield edge, even if it's rawhide like this, can still break bones. A strike to the face or to the neck can cause instant death. I hope you all have enjoyed learning about ancient Germanic combat and the techniques that they used. I am Harjaz, and this is Bergewulf of Project Germani. Velja Fara.